Hi, my name's May Samali. I'm the founder and CEO of Human Leadership Lab. We're about to watch a really exciting episode of the online prosperity show where we're going to dig into how the Human Leadership Lab came to be, the ABCs of leadership, and the importance of cooperation. Enjoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, where we uncover the secrets of success in today's dynamic world. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we've got a good treat for you. Now, this actually promises to be one of the best episodes we've had in a while, and you're about to find out why. It's only because today we've got the incredible May Samali joining us, the founder and CEO of Human Leadership Lab. Now, May, how are you doing today?
Prosper, it's a beautiful day. Happy to be here. And thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Well, I can't attest to that because I live in Melbourne. We were talking about this and it could be 4 seasons in 4 minutes. By the time I finish saying it's sunny, I could actually be telling a lie, but that's besides the point. Now, the reason why I say today is going to be a fantastic episode is because May actually wears so many hats. She's a coach, she's a facilitator, researcher, speaker, and investor. And that could actually, take us on a realm on so many different subjects, and she'll be telling you why that is. And with so many hats, I think May should actually open a hat store on top of everything else that she has been doing. But instead, she's here to share her journey, her wisdom, and a few laughs with us. And so grab your favorite beverage. I suggest that of the water variety. All the other ones we can't vouch for, can we, May?
No, we can't. Water is great.
Absolutely. And then sit back and get ready to be inspired. Now, May, could you maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do at the Human Leadership Lab?
Yeah, so my name is May, and I actually was born here in Sydney, where I'm currently based. I consider myself very much a global citizen, though, so I've spent time living in the US. I divide my time a lot between the US and Australia. These days, the main hat that I wear, you referred to wearing many hats. My favorite hat to wear is as the founder and CEO of Human Leadership Lab. And at the lab, we're really all about unlocking the leadership potential of individuals, teams, and organizations. I spend a lot of my time working with individuals and organizations on the various questions on their mind, whether it's the inner game of leadership, mindset, or the outer game of leadership, which is that relational piece, business performance, peak performance. I feel really lucky to be able to wear multiple hats as I'm working with individuals and teams and organizations, whether it's sometimes wearing the facilitator hat, facilitating conversations, difficult conversations, whether it's sometimes wearing a coach hat and helping people go inwards and ask difficult questions of themselves. Sometimes it's being a trainer. As an athlete and as someone who used to take her athletics very seriously, I know the importance of also learning how to be able to have, for example, particular types of conversations, how to give effective feedback. So sometimes we're skilling up, sometimes we're growing our capacity more broadly, but ultimately, every hat I wear, whether it's a researcher, investor, facilitator, trainer, founder, is all with this common vision, which is really my why in life, just helping people live their best lives and fulfill their full potential, whether you're doing it at home, in a team, or running an organization.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate, first of all, that there's people like you out there in the world because so many people need somebody to hold their hand, especially when it comes to having a happier existence. But considering this is a whole cocktail of things that have come together, which I think only you are qualified to do. How did you stumble upon, your day-to-day now? How did this all come together?
Prosper, I'd love to tell you I had a elaborate plan from when I was a child. The reality is I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. One of the things I love about the world that we live in today is that our careers are dynamic. They're constantly evolving. One of my favorite qualities, and it's actually the A of the ABC of human leadership, which is adaptability. I think my career has been one where there's been a lot of ups and downs, but one where I've really tried to be adaptable to the circumstances around me, but also adapting to what I learn about myself and what I like and what I don't like and my energy. And so how I came to be where I am now was not an elaborate plan, but really a product of paying attention to where I am in any particular moment, what energizes me, what resources I have around me, what the world needs in that moment. And if you think about kind of that concept, the Japanese concept of ikigai, the intersection of what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for, I see my career journey as zooming in on my ikigai over time. And so I actually started my career as a corporate lawyer in Sydney. I worked for a judge, Justice Beasley at the time, who's now the governor of New South Wales. I started my career very much in a more traditional profession. And it was various influences. I think there's been kind of three main influences that have helped me land where I am. The first is that actually I started my passion for performance as an athlete. I was a 100-meter sprinter. I've always loved sport. I'm currently training for a half marathon in Cape Town in a couple of months. But I've always been fascinated by what would be possible if we pushed our bodies to the limit. And so having my own trainer, my own coach as a young girl at the time, I've always been interested in how do we reach our full potential. That's definitely influenced how I show up with those that I work with now, knowing that human potential is unbounded. We often actually don't even know what we're capable of. The second real influence for me has been, I've had a lot of really incredible teachers, mentors along the way, whether it was my high school English teachers who helped me understand the power of communication and language, whether it's early mentors in my early career who gave me the permission to be courageous, to leave a profession like law that wasn't serving me anymore, who gave me permission to dare to dream to go to the US and do my master's at Harvard, to enter venture capital, a profession that I didn't really know much about. These mentors and teachers who let you see what might be possible and see that potential in yourself have been so formative in my own development that I became really interested in how can I be that for others and how can I play that role for others. And then thirdly, I think what's helped me land where I am now is actually a lot of experimentation and the learnings that come from the different hats I've worn. When I was a lawyer, I was always really interested in what drove us as individuals. How do we get the best out of people? How do we stay human when we're doing that so we don't become robotic, billing out these 6-minute blocks, charging? Like, how do we actually allow people to thrive in an environment that's often quite time constraint? When I was living in the US, I became really interested in my identity as an Australian living in the US, as a Persian woman, the various ways that my identities intersected with my role as a student. Who am I at my core? What drives me? Who do I want to be? And these questions were really challenged living abroad. And I came to understand that I'm not what I do. I'm not my role. I'm not my job. I'm actually someone separate to that. And sometimes I had to learn the hard way. I was fired from a job I really loved in the US at the time. I thought I was going to be sent back to Australia and deported because my visa was dependent on it. So there was some moments of kind of shock and horror. And at the time, you feel like everything's being taken away from you. But I think the learning was that I'm not what I do. And so that was really powerful. That inner mindset piece was way more important than the skills I had, that those inner capacity to think differently about myself, I think is what has been really important to then allow me to take risks, try new things, start companies, leave relationships, move to new cities, live a nomadic lifestyle, you name it. And I think that's been really, really important for me. Whilst I was working actually in venture capital, while I was leading an international organization. I had the opportunity and real privilege to work with CEO founders of venture-backed startups. I had the privilege of working with individuals who were on our teams in a global company that I was running after that. And in each interaction, the thing that fascinated me most was the human being as a system. You know, all their influences, their passions, their blind spots, the things that scared them, their vulnerabilities, their dreams, and being able to actually help the person understand who they are and use that knowledge to be of service, whether it's in running a company, whether it's in their other endeavors, whether it's being the best in their own relationships. And so ironically, as I'm writing checks and investing in companies, I actually became more interested in their inner game, the inner game of entrepreneurship, mindset. I became more interested in their dreams, their hopes, their fears. And that's when I learned about coaching and leadership development and training. And so part of it was actually a lived experience of realizing it's not enough to actually help someone build a business with just the business tools and tactics. If the inner game isn't matching with the outer game, then we need to kind of fill that gap. And that's when I became really interested in human psychology and neuroscience and behavioral science and some of the actually disciplines that I bring into my work. So what started as this personal journey as an athlete, as someone who benefited from mentors, as someone who also lived quite an eclectic career, pivoting along the way, going through ups and downs, understanding kind of what humans need, it led me to being able to found this organization. And that in and of itself, there's been transitions, right? Which I'm sure we'll talk about. But what started as working just with individuals is now very much working with teams and organizations. And so my focus has really expanded over time as I've gotten to know myself, as I've gotten to know the needs of those out there. The way that I run the company is also revolutionized and evolved.
Absolutely. And well, it's been quite extensive. And obviously, there's been a lot of lessons along the way as you have elaborated. And it's somewhat of an experiment that I think only you can pull together, because the experiences that you've had in the past, the people that you've met, the books you've read, all the learnings that you have done, all that lived experience of having been in so many different time zones also would have put you in a very elite place to be the person who's actually looking at other people's lives, businesses, and mindsets in a petri dish. And hence, we now have the lab. Now, while you were talking about this, I was just thinking, well, wait a minute, how did she then come up with the name Human Leadership Lab? And it all just started making sense. You're only just in, on the show today without the white dust coat, but everything you're doing is an experiment based on what you're seeing and how it is actually giving results in real life and helping other people, go through with that. I actually may have redefined what it is that you do, if you allow me to look at it, because lab is LAB, and it will give you L for learn, and you've mentioned this, A for adaptability, and then B, become, because you want people to lead in a way that actually drives them to success. Maybe you can comment on that, and also let us know how you working as an experimenter of all of these things represents who you've become right now.
What a beautiful trademark you just created for us. Learning in an adaptable way so that we can become. I love that, Prosper. I might steal that, credit it to you. The lab concept is one I love. Again, I want to tell you, I sat in a boardroom with a strategy team and we came up with 50 different names and brand opportunities. It didn't work like that at all. Actually, the genesis of the name is quite coincidental and one that's somewhat frustrating maybe to hear as a listener. But the point in sharing this is not to say that I'm special and I came up with this crazy idea, but actually to say sometimes we've got to trust our intuition and we've got to stop pushing, and sometimes the answer pulls us, right? Like that trust and faith that things are happening as they're meant to be. Why I bring that up in the context of the name of the Human Leadership Lab is when I first moved back to Australia, I just needed a name to register my business. And I didn't know what to call it. I didn't really have some grand name. So I called it Coaching by May because I was coaching and I'm May, and that was what it was. And it was a placeholder name. And I knew with time, as I got to know what the business becomes, to use the word becoming, then the form could match the substance. I think with running a business, we often start with the form. We say, what's the domain name going to be? What are the colors, the brand? What's my website? Who am I going to target? But we don't actually know the substance of what we do yet. What I love about my training in entrepreneurship, working in Silicon Valley, also just learning a lot from the incredibly inspiring entrepreneurs around me is go out, experiment, learn like a scientist would, and then come back to the drawing table and take a deductive approach, which is, what have I learned? All right, what might I call this? And so that same approach I was using when thinking about where to take the business, when I realized I was doing much more than coaching. I was facilitating, there was keynotes, we were doing research with Harvard, we're thinking about programs, and that I didn't want it to just be about me. I wanted other people involved. So this was simmering in my mind, and it was July 2022. I'd just taken my first international trip after 18 months of lockdown in Australia because our borders were closed. And I'd just gone and run a entrepreneurship program in Hawaii with a bunch of high school students that I do every year. And I came home on the plane, and despite staying COVID-free for the first 2.5 years of the pandemic, I finally got COVID. And as I'm sleeping and resting for 4 days in my COVID coma, I just had this epiphany, and I thought Human Leadership Lab. And I woke up and I thought, what is that? Is that a company that I just listened to a podcast, or why is that in my mind? I went on to check the URL, it was available. And so I just thought, that's crazy. I feel like that represents what this is all about. It's about bringing the humanity back into our leadership. It's also about being experiential and experimental with how we think about leadership. And it's a lab because it's all about learning. And if leadership is not something you're born with, but it's something that you can learn because it's a set of skills and competencies, then how cool if we could think of it as a lab. And I woke up the next morning, went on the ASIC website, registered the name, went back to bed, completely forgot about it for 2 months. And it was only when some money was taken out of my account for the domain name that I realized, oh, wow, I'd actually incorporated a company, and I forgot about it because I was sick at the time. And it's those moments in life that are hard to recreate, but it's about trust. And so part of what I believe is when you put your intention out there, sometimes stepping away from the work helps us get those creative juices flowing. Now, the Human Leadership Lab name has evolved. It's really about human leadership, which for me is about adaptability, bravery, and compassion. And when we think about leadership, it's both personal leadership, so being able to lead and live your best life. It's about team leadership and relational leadership, and it's about organizational leadership. So whether you're the CEO of a Fortune 500, or wanting to better communicate with your husband or wife, or wanting to understand how to unlock the potential of your team, or to stick with your personal habits, that to me is all about leadership. And leadership is a verb, it's something we practice. The lab component is all about how we as an organization engage with you. It's not stiff, hard, kind of corporate. We work with a lot of corporates, but we take a playful, experiential, practical approach. We bring in a lot of theory, so it's very much research-based, research-backed, very transdisciplinary, but we practice, and the learning comes through the practice. It comes from getting on the dance floor and then getting back on the balcony and saying, well, how was that dance? What did we learn from that dance, and what can we do differently?
I quite like that dance, because nothing really is set in stone, especially if you're dealing with humans, and especially if you're dealing with, economy and companies and things of that nature. Now, to really emphasize on that point, you also mentioned a little bit earlier on that some of the things that you undergo with people is mindset training and also peak performance, which basically, I don't know if it is dance performance, because you did allude to a dance floor right at the close of the last question. Could you maybe share some tips with our audience on how you actually maybe cultivate these mindsets, especially the growth mindset? Because so many people, especially where I'm around and from, everybody just have this statement, oh, she'll be all right. And we've always done things like this. It's always been done like this, or, things of that nature.
Growth mindset is really important. When we look at factors that influence success at an individual and organizational level, both in terms of relational success as well as business performance, we can see that our ability to grow, adapt, unlearn before we relearn becomes really, really important. And that's not just unlearning truths out there. It's also about unlearning what we think about ourselves. So one of the biggest myths that many of us have is stories we have about who we are or what we're not, actually. That I'm not able to do this, or I must be perfect, or I don't belong here, or I don't deserve this, or they're going to find out I'm not enough. Some of the stories that we might hear ourselves tell ourselves. So these limiting beliefs, these saboteurs, what we call, the things that hold us back, many of us and all of us, frankly, experience them. They're the neuro programming in our brains to help us kind of grow and evolve and adapt. But one of the first things we need to do is hold a mirror up. So when we're cultivating a growth mindset, we need to be aware of our own biases and limitations about ourselves. 360s are really helpful for this. So there are tools out there that I will utilize with teams. So we do that on an individual level. We do that about what teams think about themselves, or at an organizational level. There's also the ability to really understand yourself through the lens of what are my core strengths, or what we call your inner allies, and what are your core values, and using values as a compass and, frankly, North Star as a way to move forward and cultivate the person you want to be. So when we talk about growth mindset, it's about unlearning old truths, relearning, not just about yourself, but then about the world around you. And if you can build that muscle and skill for yourself, then you can do it for others, with others, and for the world as a whole. Now, I would say the first place to start is to cultivate self-awareness. So start understanding yourself better. What are different data points you can collect, maybe from others, about yourself? I love data. It's part of why it's a lab. We're running experiments, we're collecting data. I work with clients and teams to do energy audits, where you're tracking your energy over the week. We do values audits. How well are you practicing your values? And this really comes from the idea that we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And this is a concept that James Clear in his book, Atomic Habits, very much popularized. It's not enough to, for example, say, I want to be a great performer. I want to have a growth mindset. What are the systems that you're going to put in place day to day, week to week, that's going to help you get there? A big one is accountability. So accountability and social support systems to help us grow and adapt are really critical. And that's why I'm a big fan of coaching, whether it's peer coaching or a professional coach. I've benefited from many coaches myself. I think contrary to what some people might think, if you're a coach, how could you have a coach? Don't you have it all figured out? Absolutely not. The reason I believe in coaching is because I do also benefit from it. And we're always growing kind of as humans, right? Where there's always more to know, more to let go of. And so part of this is around having people and systems around you who can help mirror that back to you, can help come up with action plans to move forward. But I would start with self-awareness. And some people are better at doing that for themselves, but also once you start doing that for yourself, start doing it for your family unit. Start doing it for your team, start doing it for your organization.
Absolutely. And I quite like that, because you can't fix that which you can't tame. If you don't know what's wrong with you inside, you won't be able to actually go out there and find the help, or with the coaches and people of that nature. And All right. So let's say somebody has fixed all of that, they've, sorted out all their systems, but there's still outside influences, like these days, if the competition just sees you putting a blue on your website, they are going to actually copy that and hoping that, all the clients will start going just because you've put that there. There's things like all of that, which we can't control. And sometimes if our systems are very visible, our competition can come and take that away. And do we have to always keep reinventing ourselves, or is there something that you've got going that actually helps us play ball with the competition out there?
Really interesting question. I believe that the more honest we are with ourselves and know what our strengths are and what our areas of limitations are, and can be candid about that, actually, the more attractive that is for potential partners and collaborators. Rather than thinking about just the business and competition, I like to take a much broader approach, which is potential collaborators. Actually, our competition are often potential collaborators because in, for example, the human leadership development realm, I don't see other leadership development firms as competition at all. I see competition as the status quo, those who say we don't need to grow, right? And if we can grow the pie, if we can get more organizations and individuals to care about their development, to want to live their best life, I do believe that innately all of us want to live our best lives, this one precious life. But if we can awaken that consciousness at an individual, team, and organizational level, then that's better for everyone. So actually, I think with many industries and sectors, who we think is our competition are actually our allies in growing the pie. That's certainly true for this personal development, leadership development, peak performance work. Secondly, I think that there's something to be said for learning in public. When we're sharing who we are, when we're sharing our systems, it then gives us permission to come back 6 months later and say, actually, I used that system and it no longer serves me. I'm now using this new system. And that in and of itself is service and value you're providing the client, the consumer, whoever it is that's on the other side. I think giving ourselves permission to adapt is a thing we talked about earlier, is pivotal here. So we will adapt in our business, we will adapt in our personal lives. So actually sharing things as we go is not as big a deal because we know it's probably not going to be as relevant in 6 months, in a year, and we're going to learn, relearn, unlearn, and then share more, right? And I think that part of what's really important is if you are anchored in your values, then that's what people are going to notice and see. So it's not just that I have blue on my website just because, and I'm worried that people might, steal that. It's that, well, that color is in line with this core value of mine, and that's why I've chosen it. So giving people a why behind the how and what of how you do your business is the most important thing. And that's something that everyone has to figure out for themselves. So even if on the outside, people might be using your systems and copying, I think that imitation is a compliment as long as you're not breaching IP. I often have clients, I have a lot of clients of mine who've become coaches, who loved the coaching process so much, they've left their day job, become professional coaches. Now, they often ask me, May, can I use some of the IP that you used with me in my journey? I say, absolutely. This is here to grow and I think this is part of that expansiveness and that abundance mindset actually brings positive returns. I've found that when you see this work as building on itself and that where others can help, you put good vibes out there, people are going to kind of give back to you as well. And as I said, you're growing the pie. So that's my personal philosophy. I know different businesses run in different ways, but I've never found that attachment to one's systems or IP is that all that healthy. And frankly, there's something to be also shared around sharing your vulnerability. So where we make mistakes, actually learning out loud, sharing that we're deeply human. And this is a big part of Human Leadership Lab, which is, guess what? To be a leader, you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to always get it right, but you have to be willing to own up for when you got it wrong. And you are not what you do. And therefore, if you make a mistake, that doesn't mean you're a mistake. It might mean you made a mistake. So let's learn from that. And that's really a philosophy that I think is in the background of how we approach our relationships at Human Leadership Lab.
I like that. And I've even noticed that it says somewhere that you actually do strategy retreats with your own competitors. Now, how do these sort of retreats actually then go on and challenge the notion of competition? Because for so many people, they will want to keep everything else close to their chest, but you've actually really mentioned the power of collaboration.
I'm a big believer in 1 + 1 = 11, right? I do think that in business, and this is not something that I woke up one morning and realized, it's through my experience working with founders, having had the privilege as an investor to see what goes on in the minds of founders who are building their life dreams or bringing their babies to life, right? The companies they're building, is that it can feel really lonely when you're doing this, when you're taking an idea. Everyone has ideas, but actually making it come into practice, making it come into the real world, that process is really, really hard. It's the right kind of hard because you're honoring your values or you're maybe moving in the direction of your future self, but it's still very hard. And so one of the best antidotes to loneliness is collaboration and co-creation. One of the strategies, I should say, or habits that I now have is fortnightly accountability sessions with other solopreneurs. There's another organization in particular who we come together every quarter and have strategy retreats. Now, technically, you might say we're competitors because if there was a potential client for a workshop, we could potentially both run it with our own businesses. But when we come together, we're able to zoom out and actually work on the business, not just in the business. And that's where there's insights that we can get that we couldn't get if we were just alone, that we can look at what's the market up to? What are we learning from our client interactions? What are our dreams for our company? And what are the things we could collaborate on, like actually execute together? And there's a accountability that comes from that kind of relationship, which is very different to an accountability that comes from a colleague within your company. And in fact, since posting about it, these quarterly strategy retreats, I've had a lot of other solopreneurs who are running very similar businesses to myself and my friend who have said, can we come along? That actually sounds really great. And so my learning there is that a lot of us actually want to collaborate with who we might consider or others might consider our competitors, but actually we're all interested in collective learning.
You see, I viscerally believe if you want to go far, you go alone. But if you want to go further, you go together. Now, if somebody's watching this show right now and is intrigued by obviously your methodologies and strategies and everything else that comes along with it, what would be the best way that people can maybe get started on a journey to work with you and find out what sort of solutions you have for their problems?
If you're someone who's running a team, if you're someone who has founded a startup or you're thinking about making a big career pivot, if you're an HR manager or a people manager and you're thinking about how to bring more collaboration, innovation into your team, or maybe you're organizing an event and you need some speakers on particular topics ranging from career growth to mental fitness to collaboration to conflict resolution, Human Leadership Lab is really there to help. We partner with you, we co-create, we create bespoke solutions. So whether it's training programs, whether it's workshops, whether it's facilitating particular tools for you or your team, or coaching. So there's one-on-one coaching, co-founder coaching, team coaching. Really, the world's your oyster in that regard. But the best way to get in touch with us to discuss what's possible is through the Human Leadership Lab website. So that's humanleadershiplab.com. There's a contact form. Please let us know your needs, whether it's for you or for your team or for your organization. And really, we're here to help you unlock your full potential individually and collectively.
Absolutely. I really, really enjoyed this episode because I think I learned a great deal just going through your life story and everything else. But obviously for somebody who's always experimenting, somebody who's always coming up with new initiatives and things like that, what do you think is the future of leadership, particularly in today's rapid changing world? Where do you see the leader being, in the next sort of coming years?
I love questions about the future of leadership because it acknowledges that leadership is not static. The very question, the premise of the question. I believe the future of leadership is human. It's one where we are going to reward, value, and teach, re-teach, I should say, skills that are very much core to what makes us human in the first place. Adaptability. Try getting a 3-year-old to learn 5 languages. They can do it. Getting them to learn to walk. Like when we're young, we're so adaptable, and we unlearn being adaptive, we get stuck in a way. So I think adaptability is actually very core to who we are as human. It's also a very important skill for the world that we're living in today. Leadership of today and tomorrow is one where leaders can be adaptive because circumstances can change. The only thing we can count on is change. And so the skill that's going to help us show up for change is adaptability, learning, relearning, experimenting, drawing hypotheses, testing, coming back to the drawing board. The second skill that's really core to the future of human leadership or leadership is bravery. It's the ABCs, right? The B is about bravery. It's about being courageous, willingness to speak hard truths. We are living in a world, again, that's rapidly evolving, where there's no longer any separation between the personal and the professional or the political, where identity politics comes into the workplace, where we can't expect people to leave themselves at home and just show up in a particular way, where what's happening on one side of the world deeply impacts us on this side of the world, right? And so that bravery is required to be able to speak hard truths, to have difficult conversations, and to recognize that although we're building products using a lot of AI these days, that we're actually deeply human. And what makes us human is the relational piece. And it takes bravery to be vulnerable, to get it wrong, to admit our mistakes. And then the third piece around the future of human leadership and the kind of leadership we need is about compassion. Compassionate leaders are those who understand that we're human beings having emotional experiences at times, and that feeling emotion is core to who we are as humans, and that emotion is data for us about the needs of our people, the needs of our organization. And a compassionate leader is not one that just understands emotion but then acts on it. So it's empathy in action. And the world that we're living in, again, requires a kind of leadership where our leaders are not just adaptable and brave to do big things in business, but are also deeply compassionate to the winners and losers of change, to the needs of our people, to the needs of ourselves. And I think if we can really cultivate these qualities of adaptability, bravery, and compassion, we're going to have leadership in our family units, in our communities, in our companies that is going to allow us to thrive.
Absolutely. And I quite like that because now it really, really showcases that so many hats need to be worn in order for us to literally start functioning in this world. And, when we started, I thought we wouldn't be able to keep up, but you're only just doing what is needed, especially for where leadership is actually headed to. And thank you so much for giving us those ABCs of leadership right there. But what can our audience now expect? First of all, from yourself, May. I mean, obviously being a coach, facilitator, researcher, speaker, investor, 100-meter sprinter. Now you're going to run in Cape Town, marathon and things like that. Do they tell you there's penguins in Cape Town?
I didn't know that, but I'm excited to see them.
Yes, you will be seeing them on the street. I'm not quite sure about the season, but yeah, they're always, if you're going to be running in the streets of Cape Town, you're going to have to be jumping over penguins on the street. So be on the lookout for them. And besides that, what else can we expect from you, May?
On a personal level, who knows? As I said, you don't know what's coming, right? Don't know what it's going to be when you grow up. In all seriousness, I think that I'm very excited about what this next chapter holds. I am excited to have a global career and life to continue to cultivate relationships and experiences that not only allow me to serve my fellow Australians, but also many of the folks that I work with in the US and around the world. And that will, I think, be a evolving part of my personal story. I'm someone who likes to push myself outside my comfort zone. Surprise, surprise. And I don't know where that's going to take me, but what I do know is that it's not going to be static and there's going to be constant change. I think on a company level, also really excited by this next kind of season for Human Leadership Lab. Our rebrand only happened less than 6 months ago. We've had such incredible support and encouragement from the community, whether it's our clients, our collaborators, our partners, to continue this work, not only through our existing coaching, training, speaking, but in developing programs. So I think the next frontier will be online programs, fellowships, whether it's research fellowships with students. Right now, we're working various universities across the world, but also ways of bringing the community together and really highlighting and showcasing the faces and stories of human leadership, because ultimately that's what connects us. We're all here to live our best lives. Some of us are leading organizations, but leadership is something we can do in our personal lives day to day, whether we have that title of founder or CEO or not. And so part of this next chapter for Human Leadership Lab is allowing, whether you're a new mother at home navigating motherhood, or the CEO of a company that's going and raising capital, or someone that's leading an incredible nonprofit, that you can benefit from the wisdom and insights of Human Leadership Lab. And that whether it's online content for free, bespoke one-on-one training, or opportunity for your teams to have asynchronous programming that you can access, or actually some of our leadership retreats or events that you can attend, that's what we can expect. And true to form, it's going to be deeply collaborative, because that's the way that we can have the greatest impact, because it's not actually about us, it's about the impact this can have on those that we partner with.
Oh, fantastic. That just seems like a journey anyone who is watching this right now would want to be a part of. And there you have it, folks, the ABCs of the world of leadership. If you are going to be a leader, either leading yourself or leading a team, I think jumping onto the Human Leadership Lab is something that you need to do for yourself and also your own human potential. So thank you so much, May, for taking us on this journey and giving us a glimpse into what actually happens at the lab there. I think a lot of people have learned a thing or two, especially about that competition bit, because so many people want to work by themselves and obviously not actually get the insights of what it would if you were collaborating with people that are going on the same journey. So thank you so much for those insights.
Thank you so much, Prosper. It's been fantastic to have this conversation. I really appreciate the opportunity to go down memory lane and take a bit of a trip myself.
Absolutely. We also got a glimpse into the future. Now we know
right.
what to expect in the lab. But for those that are watching, guess what? The journey does not end here. If you want more insights, inspiration, and obviously to enhance your own human potential, first of all, be sure to watch this episode again, because I know what happened. You were just trying to get through to the end of it, but there's so many insights that if you sit down with a pen in hand, you will actually be able to create for and relate to everything that's going to be ahead of you. And if you're not in a position of leadership at the moment, share it with your leaders so that they too can learn a thing or two or be a part of what's happening at the Human Leadership Lab right there. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe for more gems like this from the Online Prosperity Show. Until next time, keep prospering and keep leading. Bye for now.